Welcome to the Hospo Hacks podcast, where we take a deep dive into the minds of industry leaders, innovators, and influencers shaping the future of business, tech, and culture. Each episode, we sit down with game changers, disruptors, and visionaries to uncover their journeys, insights, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative, or just someone hungry for inspiration, this podcast is for you. So sit back, tune in, and get ready to learn from the best. This next guest needs no introduction. He's one of Australian hospitality's biggest names. A restaurateur to 200 restaurant Aria, a judge on MasterChef, has an integral culinary role in esteemed establishments such as Chiswick, Wallara, North Bondi Fish, and he's even earned an Order of Australia medal. Let's have a big Hospo Hacks welcome to Matt Moran. Welcome, Matt Moran.
Johnny, the first one and your first podcast, mate, I can just tell you, I've done a lot of them, right? So just relax, chill out, and we're going to have a good time.
No, it's first time nerves, Matt, but and having a man of your stature on, to kick things off really is quite nerve-wracking. But, when I look at where you've come from and a little bit of research that I've done,
Really?
it's going to be very ironic when that 747 does the big bank and you've just come back off from a trip away to Iceland with all the chefs that you go away with, or the south of France or wherever, and then you're turning back in and you look down and there's Badgerys Creek of all places. Now how's that going to be,
mate? It's quite ironic because I was actually only out there recently, and the old school that I went to, Badgerys Creek School, is no longer there. It's actually part of the runway, and the old farm, it's off the side of it, but. I often think, 200 acres on South Creek, Badgerys Creek, is probably worth a little bit of money now, but it wasn't when we were there.
So it's definitely been taken over by the airport?
I don't think the airport's got that. I'm not sure. Natural landscape guys had it for a while.
Yeah, right.
It was a dairy farm after we left, and the Peric family, who was a Croatian family that came out here and started dairy farming in a big way. And Tony Peric, he was the guy that started A1 Milk.
Oh, wow.
But he owned all the property out there in Oran Park, which is now all housing. And I know Tony, and I've seen him again, and he remembered my father, not me so much. I was only a little kid. But, Tony's family now are, in the rich list and multi-billionaires.
Right.
So they did all right out of dairy farming.
Well, it must be something about something in the water there, Matt, because you're doing all right yourself. But and just back on those days, was it an actual farm that you were born on, or was it just a farming area?
So, long story short, family came from Central Tablelands. My great-grandfather walked out there with his father when he was 6 years of age from Sydney. You imagine the walk then is not like it is now, and you didn't have a cart or anything, or the back of the car to put things. So whatever his possessions were on his back, and I'm not sure how long it took him to get out there. And it probably would have been a dirt road then, of course.
100%.
And he went there to see his brothers, and he ended up being a shearer when he was very young. Got a plot of land in Black Springs, 40 acres, cleared it, was growing potatoes, peas. And by the turn of the century, he had 1,200 acres, I think, and the family property was called White Springs. And they had that right up until the 1960s, I think. So that was around for a long period of time. Things that I didn't know about Charles Moran, not Moran. I'm the only Moran in the family. I just gave up over the years of the media calling me Moran and not Moran.
Right.
And strangely enough, where my farm is now, which is in the Central Tablelands, about half an hour from where the original farm was. And there's a little town in between us called Rockley, and that's,
well, we know that well.
A couple of years ago, I bought the pub and some land and the house next to it, and found out on a show, Who Do You Think You Are, that he got married in the church behind the pub 10 years after the pub was built, and he got married in 1883. So there's a bit of history there. Sold all the farms there, had some money, bought some in New England. I was born in Tamworth. Something went wrong. All the farms went, and then the family collectively had the dairy farm, and that went.
Were you still were you 4 years old? Were you milking cows, or were you?
Yeah, I remember
hands-on?
I remember that vividly. I remember, walking from the main house. We got up and our parents weren't in the house every morning because you milk the cows twice a day. Yeah. we'd have to fend for ourselves and get breakfast. And I remember we used to have the bucket, we used to scrape the cream off the top to get to the milk to put on our Whitbix or whatever we're eating. And then we always walked through the dairy farm on the way to the bus stop, my brother and I, he's 20 months older than me. And we timed it so the truck was taking the milk out of the vat, and it always had like an icy layer, cold, crust on it, and we'd have our cups, and whatever was in the hose would fill our cups up and have, 3 or 4 glasses of milk before we got in the bus. So, remember that vividly. And then basically, that went, and parents bought a house for $27,000 in Blacktown, Seven Hills.
Yeah, right.
And that's where I went to school. And
Grantham, was it?
Grantham High, yeah.
Right.
Grantham High doesn't exist anymore. Grantham High, it's quite funny living in the eastern suburbs. People always go, "What school did you go to?" And it's very easy for me to say, "Well, I didn't." But when I do say Grantham, they're like,
It does.
Grantham.
It sounds.
And at one point, Johnny, it was in the top 10 performing schools in New South Wales.
Yeah, right.
Worst.
Oh, worst, was it really? And was there any of the the home studies classes and that? Where did you pick up your love for cooking, and was it a love? Like it says from my research, again, you were Parramatta RSL. Was that the thing that's ticked it all off?
Mate, I would have done anything to leave school.
Yep.
I was the youngest in my form out of 200 kids. I was probably the worst. I was probably in the bottom 50 of nearly every subject. I don't think I've ever said this publicly before. But I was always very good in one subject, and I was always probably in the top 20 kids, and that was maths.
Yeah, right.
Which kind of helped me in the end. And so I've got a real numbers brain, and anyone that knows me close understands that.
Yep.
I remember dates really easy, and I can add up very quickly, which is great because when we're doing P&Ls for the restaurants, I'd like to pull up the accountants that work for us,
No, of course, and this really will segue well into some of the other questions that I will ask. But so from Parramatta, you got an apprenticeship.
Yeah, look, I got lucky, Johnny. I got offered an apprenticeship at Parramatta RSL, but it wasn't for 6 months, and I wanted to leave school as soon as possible. So I was going for jobs anywhere, and I had a little bit of an interest in it, but I had no idea of what I was getting myself into. When I was working in the RSL, I was running into the cool room, grabbing meats and steaks for the boss. There was a guy on the deep fryer that used to just put crap in the deep fryer. He'd been on it for 4 years. I thought one day if I could ever get on the deep fryer, geez, I'd be bloody happy. But the guy on the grill had been there for 5 years, so he wasn't moving anywhere. And I just thought, one day, if I could do any part of that rather than run. And then I went for jobs, and I probably went for 20 jobs, and I got rejected for all of them. One guy said to me, the harbour watch down at the Rocks there, he told me that if the first 10 don't work out, he'll give me a call. But strangely enough, I didn't really want to go for this job because it was too far away. It was in Roseville. And my father made me after school, and I went for it. And I just remember seeing a pad with all these names with crosses next to them. And I thought, geez, this is my chance. And I said to the chef, who was also the owner, and also, probably in the top 10 restaurants in the state, and French. I found that out once I started working there. And I remember saying to him, I said, look, I don't have a lot of experience, and I know I'm very young, but if you give me a chance, I promise you won't regret it. And strangely enough, I was head chef there by the time I was 18, with 35-year-olds working under me.
Well, there's sometimes there's a moment in your life that things click, and there must have been a time when you went, wow, I'm pretty good at this, or this is what I want to do. And when did that come about?
Johnny, it was never in the first bit, geez, I'm pretty good at this. It was an oh my God moment the minute I walked in there and saw things that I'd never seen before. Coming from a background of, a piece of protein and 3 vegetables, it was eye-opening, and I could not get enough of it. And it wasn't that I thought I was good, or even when I, raised up the chain of command, it was just more that I just wanted to learn more and more. So I just lost my teenage years and just, would work, over 100 hours a week, wherever I could, just to gain knowledge. And, I'd never seen a fan strawberry. I'd never seen a souffle. I'd never seen fresh fish.
And that was La Belle.
That was La Belle Helene, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I stayed there until I was 19, and then.
So you were head chef when you left?
Yeah, I was. Well,
it's pretty young.
The head chef owner, Michael, opened another restaurant, And he went to do that and left me at La Belle. So all of a sudden, I had this power, which, head chef, I loved it. And I had people underneath me, and I had an apprentice who actually started a year before me, and he was underneath me. And obviously I had some talent. And but the restaurant that he did, it didn't work, so he started coming back again. And I felt as though, it was time to go, and I felt as though that I'd lost, the power, because he'd come back again. And
But that was, you'd worked out that that's what you wanted to do from then on,
mate,
right? That was it.
Mate, the first week I was in it, and
Yeah,
I
right.
was, I remember, seeing my mates on a Sunday afternoon, and that's the only afternoon I'd have off, because, we worked, from 10 in the morning to midnight, 13, 14-hour days.
And was that Michael, was he would you say he was a major influence on the direction of your life, or was he your main mentor?
Mate, he to this day, I swear, he never got the credit that he deserved. He's one of the best chefs I've ever worked with. He was tough.
Can we mention his name?
Michael De Laurence, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I would never, ever be where I am. I don't know where I would be without him, but definitely the direction that, I've come, it started with him. And, I've had lots of mentors and influences over the years, but that was the first one, and that's the one you remember.
100%. And was it then that you moved on to the Paddo Inn at the back? Was there a bit of a gap between there?
No. I left there, and I actually started my own little business when I was at La Belle. So I'd get home at midnight, roll pastries out, and make tarts in the morning and cakes and stuff, and I'd sell them in one particular deli called Gastronomes in Roseville, which was owned by Valley Little, who was the food editor for Delicious for over 10 years. In the end. And she'd take orders, and I'd make date tarts and mandarin tarts and fruit tarts and whatever I could make money out of. So I got a little bit burnt out, and I really thought that I wanted to go to Europe. I was only 19. I'd finished my trade. I'd be head chef in a top restaurant, and I gave him a lot of notice. And I had friends around in other restaurants. There were Peter Doyle. I think it opened La Trianon, and then there was, Greg Doyle with Pellini's, and I think he opened somewhere else. And all these guys were, I looked up to. I didn't really know them. Stefano Manfredi, which had a place called The Restaurant. And I got a phone call out of the blue at La Belle one day, and it was Stefano Manfredi. And he said, "I heard you're leaving La Belle." And he said, "I'd like to talk to you." And Manfredi then, it was called The Restaurant, and it changed to Manfredi. It was one of the most talked about restaurants in the country.
And what year are we talking about?
We're talking 89.
Yeah, right.
So I went and saw him, and I knew the sous chef before me. But people like, Sean Moran, Kylie Kwong, all these big names, they ended up coming out of Manfredi at some point. And I went and saw him, and I stayed there for 2.5 years. He bought Paddington with Barry McDonald, and he didn't want me to be the head chef there, because he wanted me to stay at Manfredi, and that was the flagship. It was 2 hats, ended up getting 3 hats, and I didn't want to leave anyway, and but I watched what was going on.
So you were at Manfredi.
I was at Manfredi.
Got 3 hats there.
Yeah, they did. I think in the last year I was there. It was the first Italian restaurant ever to get 3 hats, I think.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I'm pretty sure it was the last year that I was there. I can't remember, but I got itchy feet, and I wanted to find something myself. And I met a man, Peter Sullivan, at La Belle, who was front of house, and we decided we would open a restaurant together. We ended up being partners for 24 years. Opened
incredible.
a lot of restaurants.
It says a lot about you, Matt. Like, if you can do something for 24 years with someone,
And mate, you know what the funny
and
thing
not
is?
fall out with them. And
The funny thing is, Peter's retired. I bought him out. It hasn't worked since. It's always hairy when someone wants to leave. But we salvaged we made our friendship work, and I can be really honest. I miss him every day.
Yeah.
That influence that he had on me too. He's a little bit older, and we bought Paddington in off Manfredi, and I told Manfredi that, if he didn't sell it, I'd move on anyway.
So the Paddo Inn was because
Paddo Inn was 91, 92,
Yep.
I think, and then stayed there for 3 years. And my landlord was a man called Bruce Solomon, one of my other big mentors
right.
in
This
life.
is where I was trying to get to.
And I told Bruce that I wanted to leave Paddington Inn. I had a buyer for it, and I was looking for some other venues, and he's like, right. And I was really open. I'm telling my landlord that I want to sell it and I want another venue, but I didn't have one.
Yep.
And he's a very honest and very fair man, businessman, very astute, self-made, which a lot of people don't realise that. And he said, "Oh, look, I understand that, Matty. You've always been good to me." And funnily enough, he came to me and said, "I found you a site." And I said, "All right." He said, "But the guy won't do it unless I'm involved." And I said, "Oh, well, Bruce, I don't want to own a restaurant with you. You're my landlord." And he goes, No. He goes, "We'll just say that we are going to be partners and I'll pull out at the last minute." And he did. And that restaurant was Moran's in Potts Point. My landlord was Mr. John Hemmy's. And
You're kidding.
No.
Jeez, it's all like six degrees of separation. Or
And
maybe
because
three
Bruce
now.
and Mr. John were very good, and Bruce said, "Look, I'm not going to do the restaurant with Matt because he does business different to me." I think he meant cash, and that's the honest truth. And he said, "But I recommend that you take him on." And Mr. John took a punt on us, and we moved in there. Didn't pay any money for it. It was the old Maryvale Cafe. We renovated it. We put Moran's restaurant on one side. We put a cafe on the other side. Two Hats Best New Restaurant that year, 95.
Wow.
And then Pete and I obviously ran that for. We had that. We sold that in '99 to do Aria, but we opened another one called Bon Femme, which got a hat. Little French bistro in Palmer Street in Darlinghurst, which is now at Terraces. And it's the old Finn Bush, Tony Bilson's restaurant. People that are old school understand and they know where that is. And so we had two restaurants, and I opened up another one in the city with a good mate of mine called Quattro, an Italian place. You probably know it, Johnny. It's now Mink's Strip Joint in Pitt Street.
We're going to cut this bit out of the thing, okay? No, I don't know it, Matt.
Right.
I might have friends that know it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we sold that to them, and my partner in that was strangely enough a rock star, Kirk Pangilly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So Kirk and I go way back, and
Yeah, okay.
and we're still very dear mates. He was one of my groomsmen at my wedding, and actually, saw him at the farm the other week, him and Lane. But yeah, that was the end of his restaurant career, and I sold all them to do Aria, and that's where Bruce came back in.
So the inspiration for Aria, where did that come from? I know obviously the location is key, but when you're putting a menu together, and particularly let's talk about Aria as an example, because everything you do revolves around putting, from what my research anyway, is putting the menus together and coming up with, and it seems like a really tough job, and there's a lot of mixing and experimenting, and sometimes they don't work, right, Matt? So tell us a little bit about Aria and how that.
Look, John, when you're around food every day, and good quality produce, it's not that hard. You after a period of time, you know what goes with what, you know what doesn't go with what, and Aria was a very big venture. It was an equal share with Bruce. And, I'm still in partnership with Bruce now. I think we're in our 26th year. And we own multiple venues together, but we own venues also outside that. Because it's a really big structure. We went on and opened Aria, and I was 30, I think, when I opened Aria. It was scary. It was the toaster building that everyone hated, and no one wanted it built. And for that reason, I think we got a very good deal. We ended up, buying the freehold later on, and it was, it's kind of set us up to do multiple other things. Aria was my baby, and it still is my baby. It's still the most important restaurant in the group. It's the flagship. It's the fine dining. It's the one that's renowned for around the world. Young Tom Gorringe is the head chef there now. I think we've only had 4 head chefs in the 26 years it's been open. It means a lot to me, and it's my true real love. It's the refined food and the fine dining, and I obviously get to express my other creative bits in other restaurants like Chop House, Steakhouse, North Bondi Fish, which is casual, Chiswick, which is very much on on brand when I talk about paddock to plate, because we go back to that farm and not being on the farms and seeing how we were treated on the farms and how hard it was. You couldn't sell a cow for $1 and price fluctuations all the time. I know how hard it is for farmers, and the plight of Chiswick is about simple food grown and put on the plate. I was kind of strange because I'm back into farming now all of a sudden.
Well, I think that the passion's obviously there, Matt, and being back on the farm and seeing, and going back to your roots and seeing how it's produced and doing it yourself makes a big difference, right?
We were teenagers. Dad, when the farms went, Dad ended up buying a little place in Traralga and used to make us go there every weekend. So, I understood farming, and I knew, bits about it, obviously through my childhood. But then, Dad sold that with his brother and bought another place in Bungonia, a bit bigger, and then Green Hills, which is the family farm. I was a partner in it, and I've been a partner in it for 20-odd years. Dad lived on it. So I used to go and visit and talk to him, and obviously the finance side of it. Then my uncle wanted out 12, 13 years ago, and I bought him out, so I had a bigger share and got more involved in it, more of the finance side and stressing opinions on what we should go and what we do. But, my father's been a farmer all his life and very good farmer. And then, obviously his age caught up on him and COVID, and that's when, he left the farm and retired. And then, so the family, I still call it the family farm because I want family to go and use it, particularly my close family, my brother and my nephews and whatever. But it's obviously solely owned by me now, and I've got.
And the produce goes straight from the because I've seen
some does, Johnny, but it's a hard thing farming, and to try and stretch it out over a year. It's very costly, and we used to be a fattening farm more, and we are with lambs, but with beef we're more of a breeding farm. So we sell most of our weaners, at 9 months.
Yeah, right.
And then we go again. But the farm is something I've been concentrating on a lot lately, and I didn't get bored out there, but I saw an opportunity, bought the pub out there, and I bought some more property in Bathurst, and I'm going to do something later on this year and bring something a little bit different to Bathurst. I've always appreciated the farmer. That's hence why I did a TV show, Paddock to Plate, years ago, which was all about farming. And obviously I got to cook and I got to meet these incredible people, but it was about the plight of the farmer and how hard they work, and what they bring to the table. And, I say it, and I say it until I'm blue in the face. I would not be the chef. I would not be the restaurateur. I would probably not be in the industry if it wasn't for the farmers producing good food for us. They're the heroes.
Well, I think you're being very humble there, because a lot of putting it all together does count. But talking about putting it together and being a restaurateur, it means more than just putting together a menu. Let's be honest, right? And success is not just cooking and putting something that's amazing on a plate. It's about numbers, right? And, when you do build a restaurant, and one of the biggest keys to success is the numbers and how they work out.
Yeah.
Now, you said you're a numbers man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How heavily involved are you in the spreadsheets, because they matter. And for all the listeners who run their own businesses and who are, aspiring entrepreneurs in this game, the rubber meets the road when the numbers don't cash up.
Look, and, that's a very good point. When Pete and I first did the Paddington Inn, 91, 92, we had no idea what we were doing. I could cook, and I came from high-profile restaurants. Pete could run a floor. He came from high-profile restaurants. But we didn't know what we were doing in business. I remember, after a few months we thought, Jesus, we're doing so well, got money in the bank, but we weren't paying people on time, or we didn't even know how to really do it. People was writing checks, but we were busy.
Yeah, 100%.
So we never got a chance. And I thought, geez, this is easy. There's money everywhere. And then, it wasn't long after that when we brought someone in. Peter's wife actually came to help us, started doing the books. And at one point I remember saying, if we don't put in $5,000 each, we're going to have to fold. And I thought, geez, that's a bit tough. We're busy.
At $5,000 then was...
Oh, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we did it, obviously, and we survived it. But, it made me think, and I think Peter too, you need to surround yourself, I was very young, surround yourself with people that know more than you. And I'm a sponge, I go to the farm, and my farm manager, Brendan, has been doing it his whole life. He was an ag teacher at school. He's a physics teacher. I just sit there and I sponge. I've had drinks with you, Johnny, and I know a lot about your business, as I was telling Joe earlier, because I listen to it and I'm a sponge.
Yep.
And that's what I have. Bringing someone like Bruce Solomon in and being a partner with him and seeing how they did business it's very important to know the numbers and understand the numbers. When you say how involved, mate, I look at my phone and look at numbers every day. If there's something that doesn't feel right, whether it's food costs, wage costs,
and how do you
cost of
validate it? Is it the percentage of turnover? How do you?
It's all done on percentages, and the margin's very small, and the revenue's very large, and in a business like ours, which is multiple venues, things can go wrong really quickly. The food is ultimately the most important thing, but if you put food on the table that you can't afford, and your numbers aren't right, you're not going to be there. So ultimately, the service is important, the food is important, the venue is important, the location is important. But if you're not doing the numbers, you don't have a business.
100%.
Simple as that.
So it is a combination of knowing the numbers, but having good people around you as well, right? Because you can't just walk into a business and have a CFO, right?
No.
So it's really important to know, as we spoke about, percentages. What should my wage costs be as a percentage of revenue? Yeah. What should my rent be? And have those numbers. You really got to get into that early, right?
Yeah, you have to have.
You're going to learn the hard way, right?
You do, and even and look, I've had some businesses over the years that I've closed. Luckily, we've had more success than bad luck. But and I'll admit straight away, I have got it wrong, but I've got it right too. The numbers are the most important thing to us running a business now. And I'm across that. I look at P&Ls all the time. I work closely with my right hand. I work closely with the chefs. And when it comes to food on the table, we still have food tastings every quarter in every venue, and I still look at it and I keep it on narrative. We have a narrative of every restaurant. There's a lot that goes into owning a restaurant than just opening the doors and going, you know what, let's just take money and see how we go.
100%, and that sort of probably leads to this next question is with Aria being around, 26 years you said?
26 years.
26 years, amazing, right? How do you keep the customers coming back? How do you engage with them? Is it social media? Do you send them an email list of the updated menus? Is it PR? How does it work, Matt?
In every way, it's social media is important. PR is really important, and Aria has been there 26 years, but it has had its ups and downs. Don't get me wrong; it's always been a very profitable business, but at certain years it hasn't been.
Yep.
And that's where you need the correction. You need to keep it relevant. You need to if you start, the numbers aren't there, you don't just go and put your prices up to try and get the revenue back up there. You've got to be really strategic, and sometimes it's a long game.
Yep.
I've opened venues that were busy and then they sort of flatlined and then went down, and then let's make it more relevant. And there's one recently that wasn't doing great after COVID, and we changed the concept. And I'll be honest, it's an unbelievable business. It's a cracking business. It's full on a Monday night. It's just always working on it. You can't just open a restaurant and go, right, well, that's what we're going to do. That's what the product is, and just leave it alone, because it won't work. It's got to be relevant all the time. And it's something that I made a promise to myself years ago when Aria lost a hat. Aria's been there 25, 26 years. It's had 2 hats. 1 year it lost one, right in the early days. And I promised myself I was going to
2006 around?
It might have been earlier. It could have been. I can't remember the year.
I think I read that.
Yeah, right.
Done my research.
Yeah, you are. That's very well done. I remember that number now. And I promised myself after we got it back, we made a documentary out of it actually, which helped too. We didn't actually falter. The numbers didn't change when we lost it, but when we got it back, it made a big difference. It was a cracking business then.
But you said something in reference to that. You were, instead of a scallop being used to mince the scallops up, but then you make them, shape them back to look like a scallop, and then something like that. Can you explain that? That was pretty funny.
Yeah, John. Look, Aria probably lost its way a little bit when it lost the hat. I still say to this day that it probably didn't deserve it, but I say that it's one of the best things that ever happened to me personally. I was ready to give it away when we lost a hat, and it upset me. It upset me grossly, and I thought, geez, why? And I remember going home that night and thinking, what do I do? The staff, and they're obviously going to be just as upset as what I am, because they're the guys that are working really hard. And I went in the next day and I confronted it, and I said to him, I said, look, you know what? It was humbling for me. I didn't agree with it, but it sort of humbled me and made me realise that it can be better, and I'm going to make Aria a better restaurant every year after that, better and better and better. Confronted the staff, actually rang the reviewers, sat down with them, spoke to them, called it, and I was humbled by it, and that was good, because it gave me a knock that I probably needed at that point in my life.
I think for anyone that's been successful in their life, success is not a straight line, right?
No, it's not.
And everybody thinks that, like, and I don't know whether we can put this in the podcast, but like it's success is like having a baby. They don't know. They pat you on the back and say congratulations, but they don't know how many times you were fucked. But like literally, it's hard work, right? And like it's good to know that and I think for anyone listening out there, it is, it's tough, and even for blokes like you, Matt, it's ups and downs, and it's sideways, and it's not always a straight. It looks, and that's what you've done really well. It looks like it's been success from in a straight line.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's had its ups and downs, and then I'm going to say, the 40 years that I've been in the industry, and this year is my 40th year.
Wow, it's crazy.
It's every decade there's been ups and downs, for different reasons. Partner wanting to leave, things that didn't work, restructuring. There's been a lot of that over the years. And there's stressful times. But I can be honest in saying that the day I started, I'm still as excited today as what I was then. And I love the industry. I love food, and I people go, you're not in the restaurant, you don't cook anymore, mate. I'm at home. Anyone looks at my Instagram, I'm cooking all the time. I still love it. It's a young man's sport, and I chose a long time ago, rather than try to create one restaurant that's going to be the best restaurant in the world. I decided that that we're going to broaden and open up and nurture the talent that we had. Recently we had our 25th party for Aria, and we decided that rather than just inviting influencers and media that we didn't care about, let's invite media that we do care about. Let's forget the influencers, invite a couple of friends, but invite the old staff that actually created it. And I remember going around the room. I didn't really think about it then. I was Kirsten, 22 years, Kazu, 19 years, Andrew, 20 years, Simon, 17 years, Ben Russell, 15 years, Ben Turner, 16 years. It went on and on and on. I'm just thinking, wow.
That doesn't happen in Hospo.
No, it
doesn't.
Know that? It probably doesn't, but, and there were some people there, Elvis from Britannia started his apprenticeship. These people, Matt Moran, who's, was the first Australian chef to get 3 Michelin stars and works for Gordon Ramsay, and these guys started there, and some of them got their own restaurant groups. And to me, that is success. Seeing people that, you nurtured and you looked after, and to go on. Simon Sandel, who was head chef at Aria for 10 years, and Ben Turner. Ben's gone on to do more corporate. Simon's gone on to do his own thing. We were really good mates in the restaurant. We were great mates. There's always something wrong. And the thing was that I was his boss.
Yep.
And after he left and opened his own restaurant, we became best friends. And we both acknowledged that. There was always that. Now we're equals,
100%.
And that's a great thing. And I've been very lucky, to have a great network of chefs, not just here but around the world, that are good mates, and we're all equals. I always say that. I used to say that to people all the time.
So back on just back on the strategy, like say that what restaurant isn't going well and another one's going well, and Do you have a monthly strategy about using your social media, using your network, and using, to change the what's the cadence around that? Like, because that's important in business. Like,
Yeah, look, it's all about, being informed, being up to date, and knowing what's going on. We have monthly marketing meetings and concentrating and hitting on certain things. And when you have a marketing department, which has got half a dozen people in it, you sit there and they come to you and they'll say, right, well, this is what we're proposing to do. And they tell you, and you can manipulate it or talk about it or change it or whatever, have your own view. Same with the menu. Tom Gorringe from Aria will create a menu, and this is what we're going to do. And I look at it, and then we have a tasting of it. And then I put my point of view across. I probably travel a lot more. I probably see other restaurants. I probably see what goes on. And I know that it's got to be on narrative. And there's also other people involved in that. It's not just me. It's not a dictatorship. Never has been. Well, it probably was the first couple of years of Aria. I wanted to put my finger on everything that went out because it was me. You had a bad salad, you didn't go, I had a bad salad at Aria. The apprentice did it. It's me. So I was probably a little bit worse for wear back in those days, but I decided, and I had kids and softened me around the same time. But yeah, I was a nightmare in the kitchen. But that's what the kitchens were like, I suppose, back in those days.
And you say you do travel a lot, and we are mates on social media. I do see a lot of them, and there's a lot of it with green eyes, I must say. In a perfect world, and I had 5 tickets around the world to go to the top 5 restaurants. Where would we go, Matty? And where would you take me? And what wine would we drink?
Mate, we'd be drinking good wine. That's all I'm going to say. Whether it's French, Australian, or Italian or whatever, it'd be good wine. Where would we go, Johnny? Look, we'd have to go to London. And first stop would be Matt Moran, who works with Gordon.
Yep.
And you probably know that Gordon's one of my best friends. So we'd probably have to go to Hospital Road. One of the first 3 stars that I ever went to was Alain Ducasse. So we'd probably have to go to France and check out that. I'm just trying to think. Would probably have to go to Japan and Murata-san, who I work with on Singapore Airlines, Kikanoi. He's got a 3 Michelin star. I'd probably have to go there, so some Japanese. One of my idols, and it's kind of bizarre, Johnny, because you and I would be going there for the first time ever. Thomas Keller, who I just think is one of the most inspirational men on this planet. I've eaten at his place per se. I took him out for a game of golf at the Australian when he was here many, many years ago. I've never been to the French Laundry. Which is...
is that in France?
No, that's in the Napa.
Right.
And it's Thomas's, first restaurant. And yeah, I've never been. I don't know why. I'm planning on going this year.
I think that's 3. So
no, that's Gordon's, Ducasse, Japan.
Oh yeah.
And Thomas.
Right.
And where else would we want to go? Look, Amersfoort in New Zealand.
Wow.
I've eaten there years ago, but the chef there is getting rave reviews. And look, there's so many other places, whether it's...
Does New York rate anything?
New York, yeah, I love New York.
I love New York too. That's why I've got a soft spot there.
I always used to say if I ever get booted out of Sydney, I'd move to New York. And I've spent a lot of time in New York. Per se, which Thomas Keller's got the 3-star there, which is fantastic. One of the most inspiring restaurants. The guy can go a bit rogue on Instagram and he can be a bit mean to people, but it's Balthazar in New York.
Yeah, right.
A good French bistro, and I remember sitting there one day, sitting next to Jacob Dylan, Bob Dylan's son.
Oh yeah.
Which was pretty special because Bob Dylan's a bit of a hero.
Oh, 100%.
I remember going to Per Se and Robert De Niro, should I say, was sitting next to me, which is a highlight. And he turned and looked at me, and I turned and looked at him and I said, "You looking at me?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was about to say.
I did,
the old taxi driver scene. Yeah, great.
Great scene.
100%. So, where to now, Matt? Like, you've done so much. You haven't lost your passion. You're mentoring, which is amazing because that, I feel the same sort of way with people under me as well. That, that they're, whether it be your son or your siblings or anybody that's having a crack, really, right? So, what are the next steps for Matt Moran?
Mate, look, I've got lots of things on the ball, whether it's new restaurants and or things at the farm, or product lines and stuff. We're always moving forward. You know, my daughter, who does a little bit of hospo, she lives in Melbourne. She's doing an arts degree. She works at Gimlet for Andrew McConnell, who's a very good friend of mine. You know, she used to say when she's 13, Dad, when are you going to retire? And I said, Mum, I'm not going to retire. You know, I've got property and whatever, and I can keep going. And she said, no, but you have to. At 65, you have to. And I said, no, I'm not. And I said, why? She goes, well, you know, I'm going to take over your empire and do all the things that you're doing wrong. Fix up all the things you're doing wrong.
Succession too.
Yeah, and look, you know, she's doing an arts degree. She just came on a cruise with me where we were working. She ran in front of house with me, and she's amazing. She's amazing. It's in her blood, right? And there's no question. And she loves it, but at the same time,
That's
she's
good.
a very, very smart girl, and she's got other interests, and you know, I want her to pursue that. And you never know. One day, my son, he's gone. You know, he hated Hospo. You know, his argument when he was working at Opera Bar the first week came
Sore
to me.
Sore feet, sore legs?
No. He came to me and said, Dad, I want to talk to you about wages. I'm like, oh, here we go. And he's so left.
Straight up.
He's so left.
Yeah.
You can't believe how left he is. And he says, well, the guy that I'm working with, he's been working with you for 10 years and we're getting the same money and I think you should be paying him more.
Well, he's not going to run your business.
No,
well,
he's not
is
going to
he,
run. He's not going to run my business. No, Harry's nearly a doctor, and he lives in Melbourne, and he's a very smart boy. And medicine's been his thing, and he wants to do surgery, and he knows that, and he'll accomplish that, no question whatsoever. But you know, look, mentoring is something that I love. You know, giving back a little bit, whether it's charity with the Farmers Federation thing that we've got, and you know, I've got some apps that are saving food, and I just met the guys around the corner, Good and Fugly, and talking to them. And one of the nicest things I've ever had said about me was recently with Josh Nolan. You know, he got up on stage and he's won Restaurant of the Year in 3 hats and thanked all his staff, which he should. And I know he's very good to his staff. And he said, you know, I also want to thank my mentors in life and singled out Neil, Kylie, and myself, which is nice. And Josh is someone that, you know, I think is the most talked about chef in the world at the moment. He'll be in the top 10 restaurants in the world next year, no question. You know, and meeting Josh when he was a very, very young, he was a kid when I first met him, but knowing him from when he was very young and knowing that he'd ring me up and say, Matty, can we have a coffee for 5 minutes? Can I get some advice? And we'd be there for 2 hours. You know, that to me, I'm very proud of. You know, don't get me wrong. I haven't created that kid. You know, I call him a kid, but he's not. He is a great businessman. He's a phenomenal cook. And he's just a beautiful man, 4 kids. You know, he's only 36.
Yeah, wow.
You know, he's a very, very
So
special
his
talent.
head screwed on.
And I don't think I've really given him much at all, apart from a couple of conversations, or a lot of conversations. But to have that was really nice, you know.
Well, I must admit, personally, Matty, every time I've reached out to you, you've always been there for me. So, you know, I know the feeling, and I just want to say thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy man, and you're probably going off to help somebody else. But
but I'm going to have lunch with a heap of chefs. Actually, we're going to go. David Blackmore, who's the creator of you know, Wagyu beef, Blackmore's beef, is an incredible man, and he's decided apparently he's not coming to Sydney anymore. He's getting older, and this is his last time. So we're going to have a little bit of a lunch with him. Neil Perry, Claire Smith's out here from London, and a few other chefs, which is going to be really nice. Down at the Spit, which is a restaurant I've never heard of, and he's cooking the meat because the guy that supplied it wouldn't let any of us do it because we'd all fight over, you know, who was going to cook for him. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing my mates and having a lunch. But Johnny, mate, anything you ever want, you know where the phone call is.
yeah, Matty, thanks again, mate, and I appreciate it. And good luck with the future.
Love you, buddy.